Hello, welcome to the Thinkers50 Radar 2023 series, brought to you in partnership with Deloitte. I'm Stuart Craner, co-founder of Thinkers50. Every January, Thinkers50 announces 30 management and business thinkers to watch in the coming year. It is a diverse mix of people who have been nominated by the Thinkers50 community and whose work has attracted our attention. These are the new and exciting voices of management. And today we are delighted to be joined by two of those new voices, Elisa Farri and Paolo Cervini. Elisa and Paolo's work looks at how management and organizations can be reinvented. Working at Capgemini Invent's Management Lab, Elisa and Paolo have been documenting the changing shape of management and organizations over the last decade. They argue that we need a different model, which is more sustainable, accessible, understandable, and inclusive to all. A model that empowers people to self-organize, exercise their judgment, make good decisions to unleash their purpose and motivation, and unlock personal and organizational value. Paolo and Elisa are regular contributors to leading publications, including the Harvard Business Review, and the authors of two influential white papers, Agility Inc. and Growing Together. We'll provide the links to those papers at the side. Their new book will be published in 2024. So we have 45 minutes in conversation with Elisa and Paolo. Please let us know where you are joining from today and send over your questions at any time during the session. Your thoughts are always appreciated. So, Elisa and Paolo, welcome. Let's start with the idea of democratizing management. What does that mean? What does it involve? And why is it necessary? That's three questions in one. Elisa, democratizing management.
Thank you, Stuart. So, first of all, thank you for having us. Now, talking about the need to democratize management, let me start with a look at how traditionally management has been approached in large organizations. There is an autocratic view, which is very, very widespread, which concedes that only few elected ones who typically sit in ivory towers speaking overly complicated jargons, mysterious in some cases, are the owners of management. So they can apply management practices, they can develop management ideas. And so if you look at how this autocratic view has impacted the way in which organization has been functioning in the last 30, 40 years, well, you observe a growing gulf between this managerial elite and the rest of the organization. And this gulf is getting wider and wider. Recently, it's coupled also with increasing frustrations, growing cynicism, and disengagement. So starting from this need, this, I would say, pinpoint in the last decade, we have been working with leading organizations, curious, but most importantly, courageous leaders to help them embrace a new management model. And on the other hand, we looked at where the management science is nurtured, developed, namely the academic world. And so we listened from thinkers and professors and drew inspiration from them to help drive this management shift. So the shift is a need. It's urgent in our personal opinion. And to democratize, in three simple words, you need to make management simpler because you want it to be understood. First of all, you want it to make it actionable, so to have an impact. And last but not least, if you want to democratize management, you want it to be accessible to the wider organization.
Let's go back then, Elisa. the kind of genesis of this elitism. Are you tying it to the rise of business schools and the popularity of MBA programs?
Well, definitely business schools have been playing a key role in shaping the leaders of today, and they will continue playing a powerful role also in the future. Personally, I do come from that world, so I feel like being at the intersection of the academic world and the business world, being a consultant in my everyday job. So I've always been fascinated by the amount of knowledge, of inspiration that can be developed by this side of the world, namely the academic world. But on the other side, personally, I also always find myself struggling, how can we make these ideas, these theories accessible and impactful for organizations, for companies. And so being at the intersection of these two worlds and looking and also hearing, in our daily conversations with leaders and people in the organization suffering from this frustration, we are truly convinced that time is ripe for a shift in management.
And Paolo, what's your take on this need for democratization?
Thank you, Stuart. My take: I've worked a lot in all my career within large organizations. Sometimes with the C-suite, sometimes in the shop floor, middle management. The reality is that there is a huge disconnection, as Elisa said. You think about the famous strategic plan or industrial plan, hundreds of slides, figures, and then usually nobody gets it. And so there are continuous frustration. I don't get our strategy, how the strategy is linked to my job, my day-by-day goals. Think also about organizational procedures. I think it's something that most people don't even know where and why they are positioned in the organization, what they have to do tomorrow morning. So there is all this over-engineering that is creating a lot of, let's call disengagement. And as Elisa said, most of the trends are going in a clear direction, decentralization of decision-making within the organization. So you need to give your people, I don't want to use the word managers, you need to give the right tools to understand some basic things, where to go in terms of company strategy, how to work with other people, how to motivate your people, how to work with external suppliers. So instead of talking about strategy, organization, structure, and a lot of other, let's call buzzwords, let's try to make it concrete. On the other hand, as Elisa said, in these last decades, there were a lot of progress in management science. So let's leverage all this progress, but let's try to make them more accessible.
Isn't this the issue you describe a symptom of the sheer complexity of modern organizations and the fact that management is now data driven, is all about analysis? Hasn't that kind of furthered what you would call the need for the managerial elite? Elisa?
Well, there's a paradox in here. The wider access to data on the one side is the confirmation of the fact that you need to democratize. And you are making some levers accessible to a wider population within the organization. So the digital transformation confirms that this is a trend which is pushing, nudging organizations towards this democratization process. But then on the other hand, it's not just a matter of making data available like a sort of magic wand and believing that this can truly generate the expected results of a democratization effort. So on the one hand, I would say that first steps have been taken in this direction. The digital transformation is definitely pushing towards more of this accessibility, of this inclusion of management. But on the other side, we should not forget that organizations need to rethink some of the hard levers and the harder processes in order to truly unleash the power both at personal and organizational level.
I see some familiar names joining us. Nice to see you, Leon and Gabriele. Nice to see you as well. There's a question from Daria from Geneva. She says, Elisa, there is a need for democratization, yes, but you're also right that with time, this gap between management and the rest of the organization is growing. So they might not even see the need to close this gap and don't realize it. It's how to make it obvious for management and willingly push them to close this gap. I suppose what Daria is saying is that it's one thing saying this elite has develops in an organization, but it's another thing recognizing it within that organization. That must be the case in the organizations you come across. They don't even see they've got a problem.
Okay, so the good news is that there's a raising awareness about this need. So compared to 10, 12 years ago when we started researching about this, and we were early birds, I would say, now it's happening very, very frequently in our conversations with clients, but also with executives that we interview for our researches and publications, that they feel, also personally, also as managers, they feel this need of shifting from a traditional to a different management model. But the key question is not just about how to raise awareness. The key question for us is how to help them make this shift. And here comes our approach of developing simple tools, easy to use tools that manager can start sharing with their teams and their entire organizations on multiple aspects related to the decisions that they are taking, and gradually transitioning towards a more inclusive and accessible model. I give you an example. One of the pain points that we perceive both at a managerial level and at a larger organization is about leadership behaviors, about how you translate cultural values into concrete behaviors. This is something that is perceived both, as I said, from the population, but also from the leaders themselves. If we look at the academic world, a lot has been written. Thousands of pages of articles, of books on how leaders need to shift, when it comes to their management style, management behaviors. But personally, in our point of view, these are insights that are too generic, too theoretical in most of the cases. And when Professor Gary Pisano published his seminal article on his theory about the 5 paradoxes of innovative culture, and we started sharing, being Gary, a friend and also part of our network of thinkers and idea collaborators, we started sharing it with our inner circles in the business world. The feedback that we got was, this theory resonates. We can mirror ourselves in what Gary is writing in this article, but how can we translate this into something that can truly help us make a shift in this concept of innovative cultures. And so we flew to Boston, we sat with Gary, we started sharing with him the feedback that we got from the field, from the business world, and together we developed something very, very simple, very, very simple. Once again, you want the business world to apply your ideas and make them actionable. And so we developed a set of cards to trigger discussion on leadership behaviors. We ran a survey, we developed a benchmark to give them also some data and analytics to compare themselves to the other organization. And so with a few simple tools, we embarked on a journey of cultural transformation from within the organization, led by the leaders, but not just for them, not for the few elite leaders, but for the entire organization. And so how leaders can change their behaviors, share it internally with the rest of the organization, their teams, and also seek support from their teams to shape some of their behaviors. So I hope that this example can maybe clear the fog when it comes to this concept of a new management model, when we say, make it simple, make it inclusive and so accessible, but most importantly, make it impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose a key message is that management isn't the preserve solely of the C-suite. Management is practiced throughout an organization. The other thing you've mentioned a couple of times, Elisa, is the concept of simplicity, making things simpler. And being of cynical mind, I would say you tend not to get promoted for simplifying things. Paolo, you've simplified things and you've been promoted. It's a difficult message, isn't it? On that complexity has been kind of built into our modern understanding of management and our modern understanding of what CEOs do.
Yes,
that instilling simplicity and a drive to simplicity in the culture is quite a task.
It's quite tough. You know, I was discussing with my wife. She's a lawyer. If you think without so many laws, you don't need too many lawyers, and that's a bit the same. Yeah. To simplify is a very difficult exercise within the organization. Coming back to the leadership behaviors, it's very easy for many leaders to talk about let's call the buzzwords: agility, sustainability, ecosystem, and in general talk about culture. But when you say, okay, there are some very simple behaviors you need to apply, and these behaviors should be observable and measured, and you need to communicate and to commit to them, I can tell you it's much more complex because it's simple, it's visible, and when you manage even to measure them or to observe them, it's even more complicated. It's the same story with strategy, as I said. If you think about the Blue Ocean strategy, the strategic canvas, so simple, so clear with the tagline, 15 words. But how many companies are able to design something like that? In most cases, it's much better to have a very, very large deck, but in the end, not so simple. So in some cases, I don't know if it was a choice, but I can tell you that it's not easy to simplify, starting from the basic processes and procedures up to the strategy, up to the behaviors. Just one point coming back to the question of Daria, I also regarding sustainability and other topics, I think that it's clear that there is this connection between, let's say, C-suite and the rest of the organizations. But on the other hand, it's even more important when we talk about that to make it practical, simple, and to create pressure. And I would say digital tools help a lot.
Daria makes another point. She says, we should all get promoted when we drive and achieve simplicity. Our world is already too complex and multifaceted. So the beauty is in simplicity. I think we're all with you on that, Daria. Please feel free to send in any more comments or questions as we continue the conversation. Elisa, what about the role of consultants? I know you see the role of consultants as a kind of bridge between the academic world and the practitioner world. Can you explain to me, you've mentioned your work with Gary Pisano. I know you work with academics throughout the world. Can you explain how it works and what you see as the role of consultants? Because I think some people would say that consultants have actually contributed greatly to the cynicism and disengagement that we see in organizations.
Yeah, I would say that, recently consultants are not definitely having an easy life. But personally, also if I look back at my previous background and my past experiences, so I'm a weird type of consultants, in the sense that I started right after school in the academic world, first at Bocconi and then as a researcher at the Europe Research Center of Harvard Business School. So I spent my first 5 to 6 years of experience on this side of the world. And then I soon realized that remaining at the theoretical level was not enough for me. And so that's why I turned to the dark side of, of consulting. What's the role of consultants? Well, the way in which I interpret the role of consultant is to bridge the latest management ideas, which are innovative at the frontier, not yet on the radar screen of business organizations and companies, and translate this into practical and actionable tools that can help organizations advance and become better performers. To do so, we have nurtured in the last 15 years a network of thinkers, friends, brilliant minds with whom we share ideas, we co-create tools, we draw inspiration, but we also share some of the practices, in most cases best practices, that are developed in the business world and can be brought to the academic world and can nurture new theories. So this sort of exchange, this virtuous exchange between the academic world and the business world is how we interpret, Paul and myself, the role of consultants. And there's, if we look at how this exchange works, there's so much value lost in the fact that there's no direct channel between the two worlds. Academic wrote for academics, businessmen are too busy in keeping them up to date when it comes to the latest ideas and theories. 10, 15 great books are published every year, so it's very difficult also for the business world to remain, up to speed. And so that's why we are at the intersection of these two worlds, and there's value for both sides. On the one hand, academics can see their ideas translated, applied, and making meaningful impact in the business world. And on the other side, we see some business companies and business organizations which are more advanced on some topics. Let's take sustainability, and we bring back to the academic world new ideas, feedback, insights, and so on. So we are a bit, in between in these two words. We like it. I would say we love it, and so that's how we interpret our role as consultants.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I've met very senior academics at very important business schools who kind of pride themselves on not spending much time with actual companies doing work. And equally, I've met many executives who have no interest at all in the latest business ideas, which is kind of staggering, isn't it? If you would think if you were a leader, you'd be interested in the the theories of leadership, but often people aren't. Mehul Mehta says, I think the knowledge gap, alignment gap, and results gap across levels of organization is not understood, appreciated, and addressed. This creates the big disconnect in organizational fabric. And someone in LinkedIn talks about promotions, which is a subject I brought up, probably unhelpfully, and says, I wish promotion was actually more atomized, not necessarily more complex, but less of a big event that's negotiated from the moment you have your last promotion. I think that would take a kind of grown-up approach to management organizations, which is often not the case. Elisa and Paolo, you've also written about sustainable management and the hidden enemies of sustainability. Can you tell us a bit more about what you mean by sustainable management? Paolo?
Yes, it all started almost 2 years ago. We understood that sustainability was, let's say, a key transformational driver. First of all, for us, sustainability is both the environmental part, but also the societal and people part. What we have seen is a lot of analogies with other major transformations, like the digital transformation, the innovation transformation. So to make them at scale, you need to work on some, let's define hidden enemies, organizational hidden enemies that in most cases you even don't understand. And so there are enemies related to the processes that in the case of sustainability, they were built all in a profit logic, in a competition-based logic. There are enemies related to the organizational structure and design. As you can imagine, a lot of discussions about how to position within an organizational chart sustainability, a lot of confusion with mushrooming units and titles. So the need, again, to clear the fog, to clarify. And then you have another enemy, which is not common just to sustainability, but also to other trends. It's how to think in a systemic way beyond your company. And this is critical for most of the business today, but it's critical also for sustainability. So these enemies are really within the companies. First of all, you need to detect them, and then you need to work on them. On all of these enemies, we are also working now. There are also upcoming articles, ideas, experimentation. So it was a great success to some extent to have this umbrella concept.
And I think...
yeah, by the way, if I can say, we leverage this concept from our founder, Alessandro, that you all know very well. And Alessandro with Elisa, if I'm not wrong, some years ago wrote an HBR article about the hidden enemies of innovation. So you can see the parallelism.
And your current work, Paolo, you're looking at the kindness and the role of kindness and exploring if we could have analytics of kindness. Am I right?
Yes, you're right. It's all a bit related to what we said so far. First of all, you need kindness to be a sustainable oriented leader and manager. Kindness in the way you interact with people, kindness also in the way you think about the planet. And then the other point, we discussed a lot this idea with some friends and clients in Enel, the Italian global utility. Also here the point is, if we just talk about kindness or kind leadership, it's too vague, it's too broad. Let's try to make it actionable and practical. So first of all, let's try to measure some concrete behaviors around kindness. Let's try to create a sort of social contract, as Elisa was saying, and let's try to monitor also through analytics this concept of kindness. So moving from a general concept that is essential now to something that you can practice in your day by day and using analytics to make it happen.
And what can be measured gets done. We all know that. So some analytics of kindness might be the way forward. Marquise makes a point about you've been making, Elisa, about the democratization. Are you talking about flattening organizations? And Marquise makes the point that at times a dictatorial element in management and leadership is perhaps necessary, given the owners of the organization and broader responsibilities of leaders. Can you respond?
Absolutely. So I think it's too simplistic to say that, we need to flatten the organization. We need to, get rid of some management layers. There are also some extreme positions. I would say that, they advocate, for kill the management as the new topic. Personally, I do believe in the key role played and still play by management in large organizations. So the point is not to get rid of management. We have seen with the agile revolution that flattening per se is not the solution. If you do not align the rest of the internal ecosystem of the rest of the organization, the processes, the systems, the culture, the skills of people to a new organizational chart that is flatter than before. So the key for us, for me and Paolo, are people. So that's why it's so important, this analytics of kindness. That's why it's so important to work on behaviors in a concrete and practical way. That's why it's so important to equip managers with tools that are simple, that they can use with their teams, with their people, that can push them, nudge them, I would say, to a more inclusive management style. If we look at the traditional management toolkit, it will never provide the answer because it was designed in an era, in a pre-sustainability era, pre-engagement era, where the role of the manager was totally the opposite from what we need today. So managers are still important. Managers need to be equipped with new tools, simpler tools, and they need to be guided and supported by consultants in this shift towards a new management model.
Mehul Mehta makes the point that the vestiges of Taylorism and scientific management are still seen in organizations. Of course, Frederick Taylor was the person who developed scientific management at the beginning of the 20th century. And that kind of portrayed the manager as someone with a stopwatch standing next to the person actually doing the work and just timing out. And I think that does hold true for a great many managers. They see themselves still as the person holding the stopwatch. Elisa?
Well, they were raised this way. They were trained this way. So it's too late now to complain. So instead of just, finger pointing, the message, my message is to sit together with these managers and help them rethink how they exercise control, how they make decisions, and how they can truly unleash power from people. Personally, I believe that there's a lot of blah, blah, blah around empowerment, engagement, and a lack of practical guidelines and tools that can truly help these managers in shifting. It's too easy to blame the managers that they are anchored to an old-fashioned model without equipping them, without giving them the tools that they need to embrace this shift. So our mission is to provide them with the toolkit that can equip them to better face and to better drive this shift?
I give you an example. Everyone talks about empowerment, to give freedom to employees, and so on. The reality, it's not so easy. It's not enough to say, I give empowerment. You need to create some rules and some mechanism to make sure that you really empower people for good decisions and for good actions. So you need to create a sort of a balancing of different levers to make it happen. Of course, with digital technologies now is easier, but it's not so simple. So just saying we need to be agile, to empower, to make people free, or to flat the organization. It's not the answer. It might be a goal, but it's too simplistic. You need some tools. You need some frameworks to help take these decisions. And for some processes, maybe you need also a lot of control. For some others, you can let go a bit more. So it's not an easy journey. We try to simplify as much as possible, but on the other hand, we need also to avoid to go for a sort of for dummies approach. So we say there is a lot of management science that has been developed also after Taylor. Let's incorporate this smart management science into simple frameworks.
And how do senior business leaders respond to the idea of democratization? I mean, and asking them to sign up for it seems a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas. It would appear unlikely that if you're the CEO of a large organization with lots of power, human nature suggests that people don't give up power very, very easily. So what kind of response do you get when you talk about democratization to senior managers? Elisa?
Yeah, the funny thing is that we never initiate a conversation talking about this, the topic of democratization. We let them speak first. And then we help them realize that what they are asking us for is exactly this need for, transitioning towards something that can be simpler, so easy to share internally, to explain internally, something that can open the doors of their ivory towers and be more inclusive. So the need is there. The fact that they connect their need to our terminology is a different word. So that's our work as consultants. So to be also smart in making the link and connecting the dots. But we find confirmation every day, I would say, that managers in first person, they perceive this need, and it's not about giving away power. It's a different way of exercising power. And the other point is that experimenting is believing. So typically what we do is very small experiments with them on what is most painful for them. And as soon as they realize that doing things in a different way, according to these three principles, as I said, so being more simpler, more accessible, and more actionable, then they see the results and automatically they do the shift and they want to apply it in a more pervasive way. So I hope I replied to your question, but definitely we do see a need from their own words, even if they never use the term democratize, and in some contexts we do not either, but we walk them through the solution. And the second point is to let them get their hands dirty with these tools, and once they see the benefit, they jump on board immediately.
Alessio makes an interesting point. He quotes W. Edwards Deming, "It is wrong to suppose that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. A costly myth." And I suppose the issue, Paolo, from what you were talking about, kindness and analytics of kindness, it's open to debate whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But it's an interesting debate, though.
Yes, that's, as you said, it's an interesting debate. It's the same when we translate some high-level statements, value statements in concrete behaviors. That's also a way, coming back to your question to Elisa also, to push senior leaders to walk the talk on some of these elements. Then in some cases you can even measure, in some other cases it's more complex to measure, but to make it more explicit, that's the key point. And the reality is that's the trend, because you as an employee, as a customer, you have more and more visibility on what companies and what leaders do every day. So the walk the talk is extremely important. Some, let's call inequalities, maybe not just within the companies, are more and more difficult to be managed, especially if you preach a sustainability vision. And especially when you work in some context where the links between private and public goods, private sectors and public sector are more and more important, like we discussed at Growing Together. So in this case, you have already visibility, and our approach is try to push for more and more transparency. That's
Paolo, you allude to the white paper growing together, and there's a sense that I think this kind of growing together is built on the kind of consensus that if we're going to solve the world's problems, there needs to be some sort of collaboration and appetite for cooperation. We've got Leon Prieto, who's championed the idea of cooperative advantage, has joined us today. But how does that interact with democratization? It's kind of I'm kind of struggling with the ideas of democratization within organization, but and growing together in parallel.
My opinion, there are some common elements, some common denominator. One, as I said, is this concept of transparency, of involvement, co-creation, co-development, where within the organization we see every day that it's impossible for CEOs to manage all the organization. You need to rely on your people, you need to trust on their decisions. So, of course, when the company is very small, it might be a different case. So you need really to enable this trusted environment. And in many cases, the difference between what you see within an organization and among different organizations is no longer so clear. And we feel that a similar approach should be applied not just to your company, but also when your company works with others. So there is this need. There is this need also in terms of transparency. If you have different goals, I see extremely difficult that you can work in, let's call it an ecosystem to achieve some sustainable results for all. You need to create this kind of approach. Probably it's easier to start within your organization, but you need to be credible also with your partners.
Yeah,
I don't know, Elisa,
if I can add a point on this, so democratization is an intrinsic element of sustainability. So if we keep addressing and tackling sustainability challenges with the old approach, the old management model, this is a recipe to the failure. So we need to shift to a model that is inclusive per se in the DNA of this approach. So sustainability entails multiple stakeholders, entails opening the doors, entails co-creating with others. So unless you shift your model to a more inclusive one, otherwise the risk is that sustainability impact will never be brought to scale.
Are you optimistic? At the final point, we're kind of out of time. Elisa, are you optimistic that the democratization of management will happen within our Well, I won't say.
I'm a consultant, so I have to. No, but jokes aside, definitely. And as I said at the beginning, so I come from a different world, so from the academic world, and I truly believe in the power of ideas. I'm fascinated by ideas, and on the other hand, I'm also a true believer in the power of making ideas accessible. And so to me, democratization is also a success for the academic world, because we can make their ideas, their theories impactful and bring them at scale.
Paolo, are you optimistic?
Yes, I'm optimistic for the same reasons Elisa mentioned, plus this digital communication connection that are bringing a lot of changes in the way society and organization work. So to some extent, it's already happening. Democratization management and tools practices can leverage a lot also tools like this one, the LinkedIn, the video. So, and it's easier and easier to make larger the target population. It's not just some selected people with some selected career path. So I'm very optimistic. In my opinion, it's already a bit happening. And so that's, we'll see. We'll try to contribute.
Yeah, we will see. So check out the white paper, Growing Together. There'll be a link provided in the comments section. And we should also thank Gabriele Rosani, who works with Paolo and Elisa, for his work. Thank you very much, Elisa and Paolo, for joining us today. We will be featuring a member of the Thinkers50 Radar class of 2023 every week. So join us next week at the same time, when we were joined by Edward Brooks of Oxford University, who will be talking about his work on character and leadership. Thank you, Elisa, and thank you, Paolo, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.